Apple has mastered something that no other company dares to attempt. They remove features from their products, call it innovation, and convince millions of people to basically pay more for less. Every courageous decision forced you to buy something new. Every environmental excuse came with a $20 price tag attached. This is a story about how Apple weaponized minimalism, how they turned removal into revenue, and how they convinced customers that losing features was somehow gaining freedom. By the end of this video, you will know 5 major features that were removed, 5 carefully crafted excuses causing billions of dollars in profit. This is the story of the iPhone features Apple secretly removed while you didn't even know. Let's go back to the iPhone 7 launch event in September 2016. Phil Schiller takes the stage and says, "The reason to move on is courage. The courage to move on and do something new that betters all of us." Apple was removing the headphone jack from the iPhone 7, and they had the audacity to call it courage. The internet lost its mind. People asked, how dare they remove a feature that's been standard on phones since phones had features? It was a universal port that worked with every pair of headphones ever made. Now, Apple's official reasons sounded noble. They said they needed the space for a bigger battery, or that it allowed them to make the phone water-resistant, and that going wireless was the future. However, removing the headphone jack forced millions of people into one of 3 choices. You could use the included Lightning to headphone adapter and deal with dongles dangling from your phone. Secondly, you could buy Lightning headphones that only work with iPhones. Or third, you could spend $159 on the new innovation, AirPods. And I think you can guess which option Apple really wanted you to choose, because AirPods became a billion-dollar business overnight. Apple didn't remove the headphone jack out of courage, they removed it for profit. But people made a good point that the iPhone 7 had better battery life. Sure, the battery was slightly bigger, but look at the competition. The Samsung Galaxy S7 launched the same year. It was water-resistant, had a bigger battery than the iPhone, and capped the headphone jack. So the "we needed space" excuse didn't hold up. It was exposed as a marketing spin. This means Apple didn't remove the headphone jack because they had to. They removed it because they knew they could. They knew customers would complain for a short period of time, then buy AirPods anyway. And they were right. Within 2 years, the entire industry followed. Google dropped it on the Pixel, Samsung mocked Apple for removing the jack, then also removed it from their own phones. Apple had proven you could remove beloved features, face backlash, and still win, as long as you're confident enough and you sell the alternative at a premium price. But the headphone jack was just the beginning. Because when the iPhone X launched in 2017, it was maybe the most dramatic redesign in iPhone history. An all-screen display with no home button, no Touch ID, and a welcome to Face ID. Apple's pitch was, the future of smartphones has no buttons, just your face. The demos showed people unlocking their phones with a glance. Animojis danced on the screen, and the notch housed advanced sensors that could map your face in 3D. It looked like magic. And then people actually bought the phone. The Face ID worked great provided you were holding the phone at the right angle, while having good lighting and not wearing things like sunglasses. But the Touch ID worked every time. Any angle, any lighting. Just one touch and it was unlocked. It was simple and reliable. Apple claimed Face ID was more secure, and technically they were right. The false acceptance rate was lower. However, at launch, you couldn't unlock your phone on a desk without picking it up and pointing it at your face. With Touch ID, you just touched the home button while the phone sat flat. You also couldn't unlock your phone while wearing a mask, which became a catastrophic problem during 2020 to 2023 when masks were mandatory worldwide. Apple eventually added Face ID with a mask support, but it required newer iPhones and didn't work as well. And the home button itself was muscle memory built over a decade. You double-clicked for multitasking, and you triple-clicked for accessibility. To activate Siri, you had to press and hold, and the replacement was gestures that felt like something you needed to study. Apple removed the home button and called it the future, but for many users at first, it felt like a downgrade wrapped in fancy marketing. But overall, the real reason Apple removed it was for screen real estate. The home button took up space, and removing it allowed for a bigger display and let Apple charge more for that all-screen experience. You may ask, was it worth it? And it really depends on who you ask. Apple sold hundreds of millions of iPhone Xs, but to this day, a few people still say they miss Touch ID. Now, moving on to maybe the most controversial removal that most people didn't even notice it was happening. Remember the 3D Touch? It was introduced in the iPhone 6s in 2015 and removed in the iPhone 11 in 2019. For people unaware, 3D Touch allowed you to press harder on the screen to access additional menus and shortcuts. You could press an app icon to see quick actions, or press a link to preview it without opening. You could press the keyboard to turn it into a trackpad. It was a power user feature. It was the kind of thing that separated casual users from people who really learned about their iPhone. Tech reviewers loved it. They called it a glimpse into the future of smartphone interfaces. Apple's marketing called it revolutionary. And then they deleted it. However, the iPhone 11 launched with a new replacement called Haptic Touch instead. It was the same basic idea, except instead of pressure sensitivity, you would just long press and hold your finger on the screen for an extra second. Apple's stated reason was for simplicity. They claimed 3D Touch was confusing, or that users never even discovered the feature. They said that Haptic Touch would be more consistent across devices. In simpler words, 3D Touch was expensive to manufacture, and the pressure-sensitive layer added cost and complexity, whilst Haptic Touch was cheaper and easier. But users experienced something different. Firstly, there were slower interactions. The 3D Touch was instant. You could press and the action happens. Haptic Touch requires you to hold and wait. That extra delay is small, but it adds up over hundreds of daily interactions. Secondly, there was less precise control. With 3D Touch, you could vary pressure for different results. Haptic Touch is binary. Either you're touching or you're not. And finally, there felt like a loss of the pro feeling. 3D Touch made iPhones feel more advanced than Android phones. Haptic Touch made iPhones feel similar to everything else. To this day, there are still iPhone users who have experienced 3D Touch and still complain about its removal. It's the feature Apple killed that people actually miss. Unlike the headphone jack, which eventually became accepted, the removal of the 3D Touch still stings because it wasn't replaced with something better. It was replaced with something cheaper. Now let's move to October 2020. The iPhone 12 is announced. Lisa Jackson, Apple's VP of Environment, Policy, and Social Initiatives, takes the stage. She proceeded to say, "We know customers have been accumulating USB power adapters, so this year we're removing them from the box. This reduces carbon emissions and helps us move toward our 2030 carbon neutral goal." The iPhone 12 would ship without a charging brick, just a USB-C to Lightning cable. Apple's environmental argument sounded great on paper. Smaller boxes meant more phones per shipping container. Less shipping equals less carbon emissions and less waste from redundant chargers. People questioned, so you're removing the charger to save the environment, but selling it separately for $20? Others pointed out that if this was really about the environment, why didn't you switch to USB-C on the iPhone itself? Then people could use one charger for everything. The math just didn't add up. Apple was selling the iPhone 12 for the same price as the iPhone 11, despite removing both the charger and the AirPods. They pocketed the savings while claiming environmental virtue. So instead of one charger shipping in one box with the phone, now two items were shipped in two boxes from two warehouses. How was that better for the environment? Brazil's government didn't buy it. They fined Apple $2 million and ordered them to include chargers. The court ruling stated that removing an essential component while maintaining the same price was misleading. Apple paid the fine and kept selling iPhones without chargers in Brazil anyway. Apple ended up saving approximately $5 to $10 per iPhone by removing the charger and AirPods. And they sold around 200 million iPhone 12 and iPhone 12 Pro units, totaling to over $1 billion in pure profit from not including a $5 accessory. Finally, with the iPhone 14 announcement in the United States, there was a footnote buried in the specs. It said, iPhone 14 and later models sold in the US will not include a physical SIM card tray. It was eSIM only, no physical SIM card slot and no backup option. Apple's stated reasons sounded reasonable. They said, eSIM is more secure because you can't steal someone's eSIM remotely. They also stated that eSIM saves internal space for more battery or components. And finally, they claimed that eSIM is the future, letting you activate a new carrier with a few taps instead of swapping physical cards. For Americans with supported carriers, the transition was mostly smooth, but for everyone else, it was a nightmare. International travelers immediately realized the problem. Travel forums exploded with complaints, and business travelers stuck with the iPhone 13 to avoid the headache. Apple claimed eSIM was more secure, and sure, a thief couldn't physically pop out your card anymore, but the security argument was theater. Apple removed the SIM tray for space savings and to simplify manufacturing. The security angle was just marketing. From all the features Apple has removed, let's find out what they gained. The AirPods revenue hit over $12 billion annually by 2021. They saved over $1 billion from the iPhone 12 generation alone by removing the charger. They made hundreds of millions from selling adapters, Lightning headphones, and replacement chargers. They secured premium positioning, giving them the ability to charge more for phones with fewer features by calling it minimalism. But to be completely fair, some removals made sense in hindsight. Wireless headphones are better for most people, but AirPods are genuinely great products. The headphone jack was eventually removed from most phones. The Face ID works well enough for most users because the home button was always going to be replaced by something at some point. But Apple could have made these transitions customer-friendly. They could have included USB-C charges when they included USB-C cables, for example. But instead, they chose the path that maximized profit and minimized customer choice. The iPhone started as a product that included everything you needed: a phone, a music player, a camera, all in one package, nothing extra to buy. But now, the iPhone is a platform designed to sell you accessories. You want headphones? Go and buy AirPods. No home button? Buy a newer iPhone for Face ID improvements. Apple learned that customers may complain, but they will still always buy as long as you frame it as innovation. And until customers stop accepting removal as progress, Apple will keep taking things away and calling it courage. The question isn't what Apple will remove next. The question is, what will you pay to get it back?